a special programme on the knife crime crisis which is killing 4 people a week, with offences up a staggering 21% last year. We'll be speaking to the bereaved, those who have carried knives, the police and government. Is this a country on the edge? Good evening from Lambeth in South London. Tonight we devote our entire programme to the surge in knife crime. New figures released today show 215 people were stabbed to death in the year to March 2017 in England and Wales, many of them school children killed by other teenagers. Tonight we ask why and what can be done to halt this wave of violence. The policing minister tells us it's a concern but refuses to call it a crisis. Others are saying it's a national emergency. We're in a community centre that offers a safe haven to those young people who don't always feel safe on their own streets. 4 young men lost their life in this city on New Year's Eve. We tell the story of 20-year-old Tawfiq Lamidi, who didn't survive until midnight. With no parents at his graveside, Tawfiq's friends are determined he won't be forgotten.
He will be seen as another number. To us, he isn't another number. He's not another number. But it has to end.
The number of knife deaths would be far greater if not for the heroic efforts of hospital staff dealing with these brutal wounds. At a frontline hospital, surgeon Martin Griffiths says he is now seeing patients who have been stabbed repeatedly. He has saved hundreds of lives, but many are simply too damaged to repair.
I don't want to spend my life telling the mothers of children that their boys are dead. Right? Do it once, it'll break you. Do it 27 times in a year, you never want to go to work. So there's got to be a better way.
And we'll be in one city where efforts to reduce knife deaths were stepped up over a decade ago, in which time the number of murders has almost halved.
I'm in Glasgow, a city that fought back against knife crime, and we'll hear from the ex-police officer who took on the young people who carry knives and offered them a way out.
Welcome to this special programme. You can follow the debate on social media using the hashtag #OnTheEdge. Tonight we will be hearing from those who have lost children or siblings to this violence, to those whose own lives were blighted by being in gangs and serving prison sentences, and to those struggling to save their community and protect their children. We are joined too by the Assistant Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, by Conservative and Labour politicians and by medics struggling to cope with the dramatic increase in the use of knives. First though, let's get a sense of the extent of the national picture, although it's hard to get truly up-to-date statistics. Home Office homicide figures published today show that there were a total of 215 deaths due to knife crime in England and Wales in the year up to March 2017. In the same period, police recorded 137 knife crimes per 100,000 people in London, offences which range from possession to GBH and murder. In West Yorkshire and the West Midlands, around 84 knife crimes per 100,000 were recorded, while Bedfordshire Police recorded 72 per 100,000. Wales had lower knife crime than England. South Wales reported the most incidents, and official figures for more recent months suggest the problem is worsening. In the 12 months to September last year, almost 37,500 knife crimes were recorded in England and Wales. That's an increase of 21% and the third year that knife crime has risen. Robberies using knives went up by a third and armed assaults spiked by 14% in the year to September. The crisis is most acute in London. Last year there were 81 fatal stabbings in the capital. 27 of the victims were teenagers, more than twice as many as in 2016. It's a particularly bleak picture for young black men. 31 boys and men aged 13 to 24 were fatally stabbed, compared to 5 white European victims in the same age range. Well, behind all of those statistics, a human being and so many lives devastated by this crime. Michael Jonas, your son Michael, died just in November. I mean, all parents are anxious when their kids go out. Did you ever anticipate something like this happening?
No, never thought of this. I've seen it happen to many people, but I never thought it would have happened to me. I remember at one point I was even trying to console and bring back life to a friend of mine by, encouraging her to just like try and ease the pain of her son who was found dead. And if she had said to me, Michael, it's going to be you next, I would say you're lying. Because now I end up having her trying to, ease my pain. Because I end up falling in the same situation as she now.
And that moment you realise your son is dead, I mean, how do you even make sense of that?
Well, it's something that happened, and even now when I'm still trying to make sense of it, I'm still telling myself that it did happen. So, sometimes I feel like my son is still alive, but I can't see him. Yeah.
I mean, Alison Cope, you lost your son Joshua 4 years ago. Do you recognise what Michael Jonas is feeling?
I do, and sadly, 4.5 years on, it's still the same for me. I'm at home on my own, and I imagine my son and think of him as being alive, and then remember, he's not alive, he's dead. And that is very, very hard, and people don't realise how difficult that is to live with, because when a young person is murdered, there's nothing you can do to bring them back, so you spend your life, with a broken heart, and that's a very, very difficult position to be in.
Lorraine, your son Dwayne also died 4 years ago. When you hear about these statistics, when you hear that Michael lost a son just a couple of months ago, what do you think?
It's devastating. It's very frightening, and it's very alarming. I'm literally on the edge. Because it's 3.5 years Dwayne's been taken, and he was murdered in cold blood. 3.5 years on, and I'm still hearing of young children being killed and slaughtered on the streets of London. It's a crisis. That's what we're in, and we need to deal with this.
The devastation ripples outward, doesn't it? Because Jamar, you were Michael's brother. You are Michael's brother.
Yeah.
What is it like for a young boy to lose his brother in this way?
Well, him being my older brother was, in kind of a way, a person who I would look up to and look forward to doing things with. And an example of that was because me and him were both into our cars. And he was due to get his license soon, which means I would have been coming with him along with Dad to go and get his first car. But it's like now we can't even do that anymore because he's been taken away in such a manner.
And Michael, it's the waste, isn't it, of all these things that Michael would have gone and done?
Yeah, it's a big waste because I was there making plans for Michael, not realizing that the plans are going through the window. And now I have to be just like still hanging on to that last hug that I gave Michael a few weeks before he died. When we went somewhere and leaving the building, I literally hugged him straight to the bus stop. We got on the bus, we had a good chat, and I just didn't know that something was in the pipeline. And the fact that I came home, I spent some time with Jamar and his other brother, and I went and took a bus and heading to the same area that Michael was in. And I was just on the bus when someone rang me to say, this is what's happening, you need to check it out. And then, just by watching my phone, playing my video on my phone, another call came in, and that was Michael's sister to say, the police is at the door, Michael is dead.
And your life has changed forever.
My life is wrecked. When I say my life is wrecked, I mean for the rest of my life. Because even when people say to me that, oh, but you got other kids, it's not easy as that, because Michael is Michael.
Thank you so much for now. It was a particularly violent night in London on New Year's Eve. 4 young men were stabbed to death within just a few hours. One of them was 20-year-old Tawfiq Lamidi, who died that night in East London after being stabbed repeatedly. With no parents at his funeral, his friends are determined his name will be remembered. No one has yet been brought to justice over the tragedy. Simeon Brown has been talking to Tawfiq's friends about a young man whose death they say should not be just another statistic.
New Year's Eve is the night to say good riddance to the last year and cheer in your hopes for the new one.
Scotland Yard says 4 young men were killed in stabbings across London on New Year's Eve.
Police have described the unconnected murders of 4 young men stabbed to death in London as callous and senseless.
2nd of January, he would have been 21. And he kept talking about his birthday, He was just really excited for his birthday. I know his friends had planned a party for him. I don't think he was aware.
But Tawfiq never came of age. These are some of the last videos taken of the 20-year-old, doing things most young people do, like posing on Snapchat with a funny filter. He was one of 4 teenagers and young men murdered in one night of unrelated attacks on New Year's Eve in London. He was the 107th victim of 2017.
He will be seen as another number. To us, he isn't another number. He's not another number. But it has to end.
Out of 108 victims murdered last year in the capital, we tried to trace the story of just one and put a face to an awful headline.
This is our little chilling spot, you would say.
Akua is a close friend helping to organise Tawfiq's funeral. She says this is where he was most likely to be seen, and it was here he was found and pronounced dead at 8:22 p.m. The cause of death for this fit young man, a stab wound to the heart after being repeatedly stabbed.
So he was into fitness, he was a fit guy.
Into fitness to the extent where he even asked me that he wanted to create his own personal training. I even ordered business cards. I got them business cards up to this day, and whenever I look at them, I just think, what a waste, you know. He had plans.
Akua described Tawfiq as a guarded young man of Nigerian heritage, without parents. She said his mother had died, his brother was deported back to Nigeria, and he was just a few years out of the care system. But his funeral, like his life, was again in the hands of social workers, with the support of friends like her.
It's just sad. It's sad. He didn't have no one, you know. And I think that's why it hurts us the most.
Do you think he needed you guys?
I think he did. And I think that's why he was here every day. He felt safe in his area.
But ultimately, he died here.
Which is upsetting, upsetting, upsetting.
Tristan is a local artist. People say he's like an elder brother to many of the boys who live in this part of West Ham. We're here because Tristan was one of the last people to see Tawfiq alive.
On the morning of New Year's Eve, he stayed on the sofa the night before.
He slept on this sofa right here?
Yeah. Even Christmas, you know?
He was here at Christmas?
He was here on Christmas night. Yeah? Which is, you know, one of those things that stick with you.
It's unclear why Tawfiq was so brutally killed. No arrests have been made in Tawfiq's case, and the police say he was not alone when stabbed. But so far, their calls for information have been met with silence from those who were there and the wider community.
There isn't faith amongst them. That's something I can most certainly candidly say. It might even be one of the things that has made people who have information hesitant in coming forward. Everyone really believes that a lot of the ins and outs of our existence in these places are tantamount to foregone conclusion.
But I guess it comes down to a question of, do you want to see justice happen or not?
No,
and trying to move past that barrier.
It's beyond that. It's beyond that. It's, do you believe that a society is capable of giving justice? I genuinely don't believe that these young people expect that justice is for people that live in these areas or under these circumstances.
If the young men here don't think justice is for them, they do believe in football. Tawfiq's friends tell me that this pitch in the heart of West Ham is where the young man played out his early dreams.
He was a brilliant player.
Could he have made it pro?
He could have. I can tell you that. He was extremely very good.
It could all have been so different. As a teenager, Tawfiq had trials with professional clubs. When his big break did not happen, he began spending more of his time out on the streets. But once again, football came to his rescue.
So you saw him just hanging around, looking like he didn't have anywhere else to go and just drifting around, and you thought, do you know what? Football can be a way for you to get some kind of order and discipline back to your life.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And when I spoke to him this way, he listened. And I was so excited because, I didn't think he would kind of like, come over to start training with us. But Thursday comes, he was there with us. And I was like, wow, Tawfiq is really serious.
But Tawfiq never got the chance to repay Muta's faith.
It was sad. It was, I couldn't get my head around it, to be honest, so, yeah.
Tawfiq was buried with no parents by his graveside at a small funeral arranged by his social worker and friends.
The impression that he left on people generally was always something somewhat glowing, Yeah, we're missing his light here. We are.
We have a cemetery on the other side of this park, and to think that we're going to bury our friend is hard to accept. It's really hard to accept.
Simeon Brown with that report. Clearly the cost of knife crime is quite obvious and quite devastating, but the question is why so many young people are carrying knives. Elijah Mokai, I mean, you grew up in an area blighted by knife crime. You now work trying to divert children and young people away from knife crime. What would you say? Why is this happening?
The reason why? I think it's half young people reflecting what they see, so they see politicians and government declaring wars and controlling with fear, so that's how they feel they need to control their environments. And also, it is the fear itself. So they are scared of losing their lives or being judged or being victimized. So they feel like if I can control someone or I can make people fear me and not take me for a victim or try and take my life, then I can protect myself.
I mean, the great irony about Tawfiq was he felt safe in his area, and yet he died in his area.
Unfortunately, there's just some people that, take it further than where it needs to go. So it's kind of like they might have an argument or whatnot and it'll escalate, and then the first thing they go to is a knife, and it's just an issue.
Simeon Moore and Dylan Duffus, you both grew up in Birmingham. You were in rival gangs, and you also now work to divert young people away from knife crime. How can you do that, when the problem is so huge?
All right, with the problem, well, how I see it, imagine you work at Channel 4, imagine coming to work every day, everybody's got a knife and people are getting murdered there. What would you do? You have to put yourself, it's all about perception, understanding where these kids are coming from. So these kids are just kids, they're scared. They're in an environment where they don't feel safe. They can act like they feel safe. They do not feel safe because the reality is people are getting murdered out there. And a lot of them are suffering from PTSD, because if I was in a war and my friend got stabbed next to me and I came back to England and I wasn't functioning correctly, I'd be saying I'm suffering from PTSD. A lot of these kids are watching their friends get stabbed regularly, 215. That means there's how many thousands of kids suffering from PTSD from seeing their friend gets murdered. How do you deal with that? And like I says, to call them gangs and kids, and they're scared, they're huddled together because they feel safe in packs. Do you understand it? So it's crazy.
I think like we're here to speak about knife crime when the reality is knife crime is just a symptom of a deeper, a bigger problem. Yeah. And if we're not going to start to put all our focus into tackling that, which is the negative mindset, so we've got a mindset that's driving a death culture right now, and if we're not going to put our energy, our manpower, our resources into changing that mindset, then we're fighting a losing battle. So that's what needs to be done.
Sefton Henry, I mean, you talk about having been dragged into the world of gangs and knives at such a young age.
Yes.
I mean, when you were a young boy, how do you even make sense of why I'm carrying this knife? What potential damage can it do?
So I was groomed into a lifestyle at the age of 8, groomed to go and sell drugs, groomed to be in gangs. So it's a society problem. And I ended up having serious consequences for some of the things. I got stabbed in my mouth, got stabbed in my ear. I've been to prison 7 times. And I don't feel that anything external is going to deal with this situation. It's internal. There's some root issues that people are dealing with that need to be addressed.
And the question is, how does someone who is 8 years old get involved in that? I mean, who is looking out for you? Who is trying to protect you at that age?
So I say that at 8 years old, you don't really know. So you're growing into whatever your receptacle to your society, to your environment.
Assistant Commissioner of the Met Police, Martin Hewitt, that film raises a number of issues for the police, doesn't it? An inability to protect this young man, but also the fact that his friends, the people around him, don't trust you or the justice system to talk to you. That's a real problem, isn't it?
There is a real problem when people don't trust. I think they said they don't trust the whole system, and I think what was really depressing listening to that was that sense that they don't feel they're almost part of the system and the system's looking after them. I mean, we are there to protect people, but I think as Jasmine said, the volume of young people that feel the need to carry a knife or are carrying a knife is creating a real challenge for us in terms of how
they
you
feel
reduce
unprotected, is what people are saying.
I think there is undoubtedly a degree of people feeling unprotected. I don't think it's only an issue of people feeling unprotected. I think sometimes there are issues about people wanting to fit in. It makes people feel strong, it makes people feel powerful. But the fundamental issue is there are too many young people who are carrying knives, and when conflict, as inevitably it does, arises, then the consequences are so significant, as we've heard from everyone that's spoken so far.
Anyone want to come in on this? Michael Jonas.
With the police, from ever since, from long time, the public never trust the police, from a long time. And in my circle, when I say my circle, I'm talking about like black people in a whole, just never trust the police because black kids been growing and been shown not to trust the police because of the history of the police.
Martin Hewitt, that's the brutal reality, isn't it?
I wouldn't say I accepted that there is no trust between communities and the police. I think in lots of places there is trust, and we put an enormous amount of effort into try and build those relationships, and some of the work that happens in this borough is a good example of that. But I think Michael's point about that legacy of a lack of trust, particularly between us and the black community in London, is a real issue that we constantly have to try and work against.
Very quickly on that point, Mohammed. I mean, you've been stabbed yourself.
Yeah. So again, just on the issue of the police, for me, I feel like, number one, when we look at statistics, young black males 6 times more likely to be stopped and searched, 4 times more likely to be arrested, more likely to receive a custodial sentence than their white counterpart for the same crime. And that brings about the issue. For me, this is not an issue the police should be leading on. This should be a community lead with support from the various organisations. And I think when we look at the public health models and things like the Youth Violence Commission that are coming out, we're getting more and more evidence for that. And what we need is the government and the different political parties to put that all aside and start moving towards working to that.
You lead us very cleverly into the question of what does the government say. Let's hear now from the government. Earlier I spoke to the Policing Minister, Nick Hurd, at the Home Office, and I began by asking if the government's strategy is failing.
We have a problem, we accept that, but as we'll explore, we're doing a huge amount to try and get on top of it.
Is that how you describe it, a problem? I mean, other people are describing it as a crisis or an epidemic. What is the best way to describe this?
We've got too many people dying as a result of knives, and too many young people.
Is it a crisis?
There are far too many. Each one is much more than a statistic. Each one is an individual story. But when I look at what we're doing and have done for some time to look at the law, to look at what we can do to ban the sale of some of the worst kind of knives, when we look at what we're doing in terms of much tougher police enforcement, I can point to a lot of progress, but we accept the fact that we've got to do more, which is why we're producing
you can point to progress.
A serious violence strategy.
Knife crime has gone up by 21%. That is not a sign of any progress. That suggests that nothing is working.
There are too many knife crimes. It's quite a complex picture in terms of actually what's happening underneath those. Some of that, it means better police recording, of crime. But we accept.
Well, the deaths are nothing to do
No,
with
we
police
accept.
reporting, they're a fact.
There are, too many homicides involving knives and serious violence. This is a big challenge for us as a country, big challenge for the government, big challenge for us all, because of course there's bits that government can do, bits that the police can do, bits that the court can do, but actually this is a challenge for society in terms of how we try and turn young people particularly away from violence, away from crime, and help them to make better choices.
What a lot of the community groups that we're speaking to at the moment, that we'll be speaking to in our programme tonight, will say is there is an absolute crisis of funding, that very many services which young people would be accessing, which might protect them from this, are closing, and that austerity is part and parcel of this whole crisis.
I'd need to see some evidence for that. I don't necessarily believe it. Yes, in some areas, local authorities have had to cut youth services, but at the same time, government has invested many millions of pounds in new opportunities for young people to embrace. I dispute that this is about resources. I think this is about a society challenge where we ask ourselves, why is it normal and necessary? Why do young people feel it's normal and necessary to carry knives? What is the cultural issue here where we have got this attitude to violence, which we have got to challenge?
When
and it
you're
is
talking about
not
the
enough.
cultural issue,
It is not
are you
enough,
talking
frankly.
about any specific
It's
group?
not enough, frankly, just to point the finger at government. We've got a huge responsibility to play. Police have got a huge responsibility.
Do you think if more of the victims of knife crime were white, the government and MPs would take this more seriously?
No, I reject that completely. I mean, it is. I absolutely reject
Doreen
that.
Lawrence,
No, it's,
mother of Stephen Lawrence, says that she believes that to be
well,
true.
of course, I respect her position on that. She's gone through hell, and I totally respect her position on that. But I reject the assertion. It is impossible not to feel deeply moved when you read the stories in the paper, talk to individuals involved, hear the stories on the TV. Everyone is deeply moved by it, shocked by it. This is a very big challenge. It's something we've got to work together on.
Do you accept that people don't think, this government thinks it's a priority yet?
It's an absolute priority for this government. The Home Secretary has made that clear. That's why we have introduced the laws that we've had. We stiffen sentences, so mandatory minimum sentence for second possession of a knife, 2 strikes and you're out. Investment in community groups working anti-crime. Working with the police on tougher enforcement and these knife sweeping exercises, again, national operation
Still
next
a
week.
21% rise in knife
Yes,
crime.
and that's too many, which is why we're coming forward with the serious violence strategy in the spring. It's a big challenge for government, big challenge for the police, but it's a big challenge for us as a country.
Nick Hurd, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nick Hurd, the policing minister there. Can I just ask, he says this is absolutely a priority for government, and I just wondered, on a show of hands, how many people think that's true? Is this a priority for government? Sean Bailey, you don't surprise me, Conservative member of the London Assembly. You think this is a priority for government?
Well, I know it's a priority for government because obviously I'm involved in that and I've been involved in the conversations to look at what we need to do. But the situation there, if you listen to the stories that have been talked about in this room, a large part of it has been about the community, what the community wants, what they need, and what effect this epidemic in knife crime has had upon them. The deep part for me is about the culture, because we are effectively saying to people, because people don't have money, they run out and stab people. Simply not true. There's something deeper going on. It's about the mental health of our children. It's about how we encourage the children. It's about how we use the police. The police have a poor relationship with the black community and with young people in general. That's a fact. That's an absolute fact. We need to repair that, because the very community we need to connect with in order to solve this, we have no relationship.
So very briefly, on the Doreen Lawrence point, mother of Stephen Lawrence, she says that if there were more white people being stabbed, this would be a higher priority. You don't agree with her?
I absolutely don't agree. And what I would say is our Mayor of London isn't white and he runs the police in London. So I wonder if someone put the question to him, what he would say.
Sarah Jones, Labour MP. Is this a priority for government? Should they be handling it differently?
I think I don't want to make a party political point, because that is so unhelpful. And I think the key point here is there's a lot of people here who want to try and fix this problem, and bringing politics into it doesn't help. But I think it's not, for lots of reasons, the priority that it needs to be. And I think the point about it being a symptom of a whole raft of other things is absolutely spot on. And the key is tackling all of those issues. And we mustn't put it in the too hard box, which I think is a little bit what the minister was saying. He was saying, oh, it's complex. Actually, there's a lot of things we know about kids who are being excluded from school, about mental health, about lack of youth services. We could tackle this if the government made it a priority.
Sophie Linden, Deputy Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan has just launched his anti-knife crime strategy. What do you think is the essential message he is trying to get across?
So we launched the knife crime strategy last year. What it tries to do is work with the police, and we are working with the Metropolitan Police to ensure there's proper enforcement, but it absolutely looks to tackle the symptoms and looks to tackle the drivers of crime, of knife crime and violence, looking at mental health services, working with schools and working with communities and families. But can I just say about priorities? For us, it is a priority in London. We're putting money into that and investing it. If it was a real priority for the government, they would invest. They are taking money out of mental health services, taking money out of schools and taking money out of the police. So warm words aren't enough. We need the money and the investment in the services that are going to make the difference.
Very quickly, on the issue of police resources, I mean, Nick Hurd says this is not really about resources for the police. Martin Hewitt?
It's not. I'm not going to get into a discussion about resources. We have this
Well,
as an
it's
absolute,
key, though, isn't it?
Of course it's key, but we have this as an absolute priority for what we're doing in London. There's an enormous amount of evidence of all the activity that we are doing, not just the enforcement activity, because that is important, because that's the bit that we can do, but all the work we do also with schools, with other groups that are working with young people to try and deal with the root cause issues. Because again, I would echo the point that what we're seeing in terms of the violence is a symptom of the place that a lot of young people find themselves in. But it is a priority for us, and we use our resources as best we can.
Peter Kirkham, you used to be at the Met Police. I mean, not an issue of resources as far as you're concerned?
It's totally an issue of resources. Martin might not be willing to get into a discussion about it. I will. The Metropolitan Police have had 600 million taken out of their budget. They've got another 400 million going. That's $1 billion out of an organisation. They have lost. They've kept the number of police officer losses down so far, but they're going to lose another 1,500 to 3,000 by 2020. They're rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Neighbourhood policing has almost disappeared, despite the Mayor's office trying to put something back into that, but it's been taken from somewhere else. They're not extra officers.
On the ground, does that matter? Lorraine?
It matters. Can we look at the facts? I've lost my son. Jonas has lost his son. The fact of the matter is our children are being killed on the streets of London. That's a fact. The resources are needed. The police they've got cuts, just like this man has said. Let's deal with the facts of this, because it's that serious. We need the government to take our children's lives serious and be human beings and support the police and support the community.
Sean Bailey, you say the government's taking it seriously. Lorraine Jones doesn't think so.
It's absolutely a fact that the police have had money taken out of their budget, but it's also a fact there's more police on the street today than there are at the low point statistically for knife crime in London. The point I would make, though, there's nobody in London who wouldn't ask for the police to have more to carry out the safety element. But we have to also look at what are the police doing with the resources they have. The Mayor's knife crime strategy was nice, but it's shallow. There's many more things it could do. Again, if you listen to the comments made in this room, people are talking about the culture that delivers knife crime. Why do our children feel unsafe? The scariest thing about the bump in knife crime now, it's not the supposed gang-involved people, it's not the people who are known to the police, it's because children feel unsafe. That's what we need to be looking at here.
Very quickly at the back.
Yeah.
Ira, who runs this centre.
I run this centre, and for us, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we come across every day around the knives and stuff, there is about the police, but actually it's a lot more deep-rooted than that. We've got young people who are coming through from disadvantaged families, who're coming through from trauma on all different kind of levels, war-torn countries they're coming in from, and actually just saying for the police that it ain't going to solve it. There's stuff around therapy that's needed, there's one-to-one work. It isn't as easy as everybody thinks that you just throw money at it, put a blanket over it, and it's all good. It isn't actually that. It's a long-term kind of solution has to come to it.
We're going to come to solutions in just a moment, but first, someone dealing with the consequences of knife crime on a daily basis is Martin Griffiths, the lead trauma surgeon at the Royal London Hospital, which last year treated a record 702 stabbing victims. That's roughly 2 every day. And a warning, there are some graphic images of the reality of those injuries coming up. Our health and social care correspondent Victoria MacDonald has been speaking to Mr Griffiths and a trauma care worker about the battle to save lives.
Trauma surgeon Martin Griffiths thinks in twos.
2 stabbings a day, 2 shootings a week.
The sweet spot has changed. Interpersonal injury and stabbings, for example, we used to say 5 years ago, see people in their late teens to early 20s with a solitary stab wound. But nowadays it's not common to see a 16-year-old as a patient. We have as many people on the paediatric ward with stabbings we have in the adult ward.
This is the Royal London Hospital in the East End, one of 4 major trauma centres in the capital.
This is me performing open cardiac massage on a chap who opened in our resuscitation bay. He was stabbed here and came in cardiac arrest and opened his chest from side to side to deal with a knife injury. This is the harsh reality of knife crime in my practice. See, this is what I get most distressed about. This young man is dead.
And he was young?
Very young. I think he wasn't even 20. He hadn't had the chance to ever have a life. This boy died in a resuscitation bay with lights and beeps, nowhere near his family, on his own with strangers, for no reason. I've got to deal with this. I've got to close him up. I've got to talk to his mother. I've got to tell her that the boy who went off to school that morning is dead.
What do you say?
Sorry.
Mr. Griffiths keeps these images to drive home a powerful message.
This is obviously a large bladed knife with an injury to the sort of upper abdomen and torso. And as you can see, it's gone right into the hilt. So this has been inflicted with significant force. This is an emotional injury. This is not something that's been done out of random. This is somebody who genuinely wanted to hurt this person. And when you stab somebody, you're right up close to them, okay? You can smell their breath, you can feel the heat on them, and that knife has gone in. I suspect the knife went in, and the person who did it lost all their anger because they wanted to hurt them that bad. Once it was done, it was done.
The young man survived, but Mr. Griffiths' overriding concern is not just to keep them alive, but to stop them coming back.
I know, as a pragmatist, okay, that I don't want to spend my life telling the mothers of children that their boys are dead. Right? Do it once, it'll break you. Do it 27 times in a year, you never want to go to work. So there's got to be a better way.
So 3 years ago, through the hospital and with the St. Giles Trust, he set up the Violence Reduction Programme.
So I'm going to go and see a 19-year-old young man that was stabbed at the beginning of this year, quite viciously, multiple stab wounds. And
Roisin Kevill is the trauma caseworker, there at the bedside when they are scared and scarred.
Unfortunately, it happened very close to home, so we're not
So he can't go back?
No. Well, he could, but if he does go back, you're setting him up for possibly further attacks, or you're setting him up to become part of the criminal justice system, because he's not going to feel safe enough to walk out of his home without possibly carrying a weapon.
The team can spend months helping them, keeping them safe.
We have assessed him and we've linked him in with the homeless team here in the hospital, who we work very closely with. And the aim is to get police support in Letter, which I'm sure won't be a problem, and basically try and relocate this young person, assist him with integrating back into the community.
And how do you deal with these young kids?
For a lot of the young people, it's not the first time they've come in contact with professionals. Most professionals have agendas. They have boxes to tick. We don't. So because we don't have an agenda, and I think because we do genuinely care, we genuinely want to make a difference, I think that comes across. And I think the language that we use is also very important. And the fact that, we're catching them at a time where they face their own mortality. And for a lot of young people, that is, it's a big traumatic event in their life.
Through this project, they've reduced readmission rates from 45% to just 1%. But new admissions, they just keep coming, 20% more year on year.
So he sustained multiple injuries as part of a quite a fairly frenzied attack to him. These are just ones in the front, ones in the back we haven't seen. And back in the day, this would be a very rare occurrence. We would see older guys with one stab wound. Now we see 16-year-olds with half a dozen to a dozen stab wounds on a routine basis. I expect to see 7 or 8 guys come in through the door every weekend with these kind of injuries. What's apparent is that people who are the victims of injury have no idea what the consequences are going to be. When they got stabbed, their friends ran away. When they were stabbed, they were on their own. They lay on the ground with the police officer and the ambulance crew around them. And the only person, the best friend they had was a paramedic, and they called for their mum, because no one else was there. And that's the reality of knife crime. I think that's very, very, very sobering.
Well, Martin Griffiths, who featured in that film, is with us. I mean, you literally see the carnage knife crime causes, the absolute devastation. Who's responsible for this? How do we solve this? Who needs to step up?
Who isn't responsible? We're all responsible. We spend all our time blaming everybody else. We blame education, we blame social services, we blame the police, we blame other parents. But whose responsibility is it? All of us. We get the society that we accept. When we stop caring about vandalism, about misbehaviour, about social order, about respect and mentorship, we all are culpable. We all have to do something about it, and we're all responsible.
What's the reaction to that? We're all responsible.
So, my name's Gavin McKenna, Director of Reach Every Generation. I want to bring a spin on it because I'm working in places like Essex, Windsor and Maidenhead, and I'm seeing the same as what the gentleman said. Antisocial behaviour creeps into drug running, creeps into friendship groups breaking and stabbing. So, I'm from London, born and bred here, went through the same gang lifestyle, but actually, I'm seeing it spread out now. So, the more 90% white communities, I'm seeing kids get stabbed and dying too. And I think what I'm saying is that it's so much of a problem that it's now going everywhere else. It's spreading out. And how do you contain a problem in an area like that that isn't built to survive that kind of problem?
I would say that it's a situation where people are not being heard. And when someone's not being heard, they rebel. So this is, in the life that I lived, I was a notorious gang member. And in my world, I did it the way that I wanted to, because I didn't fit into society. So until society looks on some of the issues that I face, the problem's not going to end.
But do people accept that we all have to step up? Andre from Manhood Academy, you are one of the co-founders. You teach boys to be men. Why do boys have to be taught to be men? Where are their parents?
Where are their parents? Well, I'd just like to say the Manhood Academy for boys, we focus on a solution to this problem. We focus on the greatness of our young people. We bring out the greatness in the young people. We teach them emotional intelligence. We teach them social etiquette. We teach them how to navigate this concrete jungle, this urban concrete jungle, which they have to survive. And further to that, we talk about postcodes. We take them completely out of their comfort zone. The postcode we're taking them to is called Gambia in Africa, where we will initiate our young boys into men. They will be trained to serve our community into the future. So we are totally solutionary based in what we do, me and my comrades to my right. And we focus totally on the solution, because we can talk about the problems over and over again, but what are we going to do about it? We self-fund. Our parents raise the funds to go to Gambia. We fundraise through different community events. And we're just making it happen because we're not relying on any system to do that for us.
Lucinelle Taylor, you work with Red Thread, which does similar work to Martin Griffiths. We did a film with your organisation. One of the most tragic things in that film, the young man is stabbed and he comes in alone and he goes back out alone. Mm-hmm. How do you, it makes logical sense that he's going to take a knife and think, I've got to protect myself. How do you stop them doing that?
I think one of the most important things is by the time you come to hospital, the social care definition of significant harm has already occurred. You're already hurt, the worst thing, in theory, has already happened. And so, exactly as our colleagues, our St Giles colleagues, what we are trying to do is just in that moment, even if it is a one-off incident, say, I am saying to young people, we are all saying, there is nothing you can tell me that will convince me that you deserve this. It shouldn't have happened. It's not okay. It was never going to be okay. None of us, all of the adults around you, the village that are raising that child or should be raising that child, none of us want this to happen again. So talking about this idea of trying to prevent them from coming back. In terms of how do we how do we actually do that? I think it's a very complex. Everybody exactly has got a part to play, because we don't ever want to see those we didn't want to see them hurt in the first instance, we definitely don't want to see them hurt again.
Initiatives like Police Scotland's Violence Reduction Unit, set up to tackle all kinds of violent behaviour, including knife crime. Over a decade on, they say Glasgow is no longer the murder capital of Europe. Our Scotland correspondent Kieran Jenkins has been finding out more about their work.
But you can't really have a conversation about knife crime in the UK without looking at what has happened here. A decade ago, Scotland, and Glasgow especially, had a huge problem with knives and knife deaths in particular. So they decided to do something about it. And at times, it was pretty unconventional. But over a decade, the number of murders almost halved. Now, I've been speaking to the police officer behind some of those crime-cutting ideas, John Connaughton, co-founder of the Scotland Violence Reduction Unit, and he was telling me about the scale of the problem he first encountered.
So we went to the east end of Glasgow, where at that time we had something like 600 and odd young men involved in gang fights. If you were a young man in a typical Glasgow murder, you would be under 20 years of age. It would be a knife, and that was typical.
Young working class
white men.
Yeah.
That's what they were, east end of Glasgow, yeah. Who had probably were out of school, they had no positive male role models in their life, living in poor areas, poorly educated, no aspiration, little hope. That's what they were.
I've heard that you almost sort of staged an intervention with these people. You got them all together.
Yep. For the first time, people actually said, we care about what happens to you, and we're going to try and help you be better. We're not going to fix you. And if you need the jail, you'll get the jail, make no mistake about that.
Because the jail terms have increased, wouldn't they?
Yeah, the first thing we did is we increased the number of stop searches in the right areas. We doubled the possibility from 2 to 4 years for a prison sentence. We kept people in custody if they were caught with a knife. They weren't liberated in bail, they were kept in custody until they went to court. So we did all of that stuff.
But you also offered them a way out.
Yeah. We said, if you don't want to do this, let's do something else. And one of the things that was really interesting for me was that we took them all, there were the first 85 we had, we said, we took them to the Sheriff Court, and we had a maxillofacial surgeon speak to them, who said, I can't stitch babies' cleft palates. There's a waiting list for that because I'm stitching up you guys. You need to stop that. We've had enough of that. There was a mum whose son had been murdered, and that was the most powerful thing that was there. And we also had, which was hugely important, we had a couple of young men who'd been in their position and who'd changed their lives around. And they spoke to them. And all we said to them was, call this number and we'll try and help you. And they did.
So this is what sets Scotland apart. You treat it like a disease-infected society, and
absolutely.
Everyone gets involved. Schools, hospitals.
Absolutely. Communities, individuals.
Yeah. It's not just the police.
It's not just the police. This is not a crime issue. If this was a crime issue, it would be fixed. And the idea that you can arrest your way out of this is nonsense. You either want to do it or you don't. It's an ideology. If you want to do it, you can do it.
That was John Connaughton talking to our Scotland correspondent Kieran Jenkins, where he says there you cannot arrest yourself out of this problem.
No, I agree entirely. I mean, there is clearly a role for the police to play, and John made that point, I think, very powerfully, but that has got to be surrounded by all the other activity that is dealing with all those root causes we've talked about and offering young people a way to a different life.
And Michael Jonas, after your son died, I saw you say the black community has to step up.
Yeah, because one thing that I would have liked to get a full understanding of, in this country, I noticed there's a lot of corruption. Corruption is like at the top. And if you have corruption at the top, how are you going to deal with what's coming from the bottom? Because you need to clear upstairs before you come downstairs. The next thing, with the social service, when a child is in their home and they've been abused or anything like that, the social service usually step in, and the social service usually get the hint from either when that person go to school or so and so. But when you have young kids out on the street running around late at night...
What about the parents? That is the question, isn't it?
So yeah. With the parents have been deprived. Some of them have been deprived because social service take away that power from them.
Yvonne at the back, you lost your son, didn't you?
Just really emotional now. I mean, 2010, I lost my son, Godwin, through knife crime. And firstly, I just want to say, lots of people tend to say, oh, 2010 is a long time ago. I just want to kind of reassure all of you that when you lose a child, regardless how long it is, you just grieve for the rest of your life. Because when you have your child becomes your future. And when this future gets taken away from you, you've just got this pain and this darkness that you have to deal with for the rest of your entire life. So I think we need to sometimes take away the notion that, oh, that was a long time ago. You grieve, whether it was yesterday or today. And the second thing that I wanted to kind of say was, when Godwin died, as a parent, I kind of started reflecting on the courses and some of the things that we can do forward. And that's why we've got the Godwin Lawson Foundation. And we kind of look at, because one of the questions was, Godwin went through education system for whole 5 years. Where was his teachers? Nobody saw any signs. Godwin's killer went through the education system. Nobody saw anything. So we look at prevention and intervention right at year 6, where teachers start looking at the signs and the concerns, and we go in and do lots of intervention on building confidence, actually decision making, and how you can say, I'm a better person than that, I can make the right decisions. Can I just...
Hello, so my name's Anna McGeechee, otherwise known as Curly. I do performance poetry workshops in schools up and down the country, working with people with referral units and that as well. And Gandhi said himself, man, the greatest form of violence is poverty. And I think there's a lot to be said about that in terms of all the different services that are involved in helping to bring up our children, whether it's schools, obviously parents who work so hard in order to bring money in as well. There's massive gaps in children's development, and I think that investment is a key issue.
I've got a couple of minutes still on the programme.
Yeah, I think that I work for St Giles's Trust. My name's Tony Harriott. I'm a team leader for the Lambeth SOS Gang Exit Programme. And I think that the key why we've been so impactful in Lambeth as St Giles Trust is partnership working and multi-agency working and getting people from grassroots levels sitting around the table and coming up with solutions for these young people.
So the young people's families, their friends.
Young people's families, community organisations like Manhood Academy, Marcus Lipton Youth Centre, we all need to be there because at the end of the day, we all play a part in growing up these young people.
Martin Griffiths' point, we're all part and parcel of the solution.
If we're not a part of the solution around the table, then how is it going to be effective within our community?
Alison, very briefly, if you would.
Just, the government is saying they can arrest their way out of it, etc. Communities and community workers should not be having to fund and raise money to put services back in that the government have taken out. If they reinvested and helped everybody in this room, help the young people, we would see a difference.
Sean Bailey, is that? I mean, that's a point made by many people who are trying to do stuff in the community.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be quick.
There's no doubt the community organisations need more money. They always have done. The intervention I would make is around mental health, and also for the challenge for London in particular, or the regional government level, is finding a way to fund the smallest organisations because they have the biggest.
Problem.
They have the
young
biggest.
People are being killed on the street. All
agree
over
that,
the
but
UK,
we're talking about
not just black children.
If we're talking about London, it's the smallest charities who have the best connection, who make the biggest impact.
Just to pick up on that point, I want everyone, if they can, come in. I mean, the Scotland experiment or the Scotland plan is what you would like to see.
Absolutely. I think this idea that, violence breeds violence, it's an epidemic and we need to kind of get in and have real firm interventions. And they don't always cost too much. So the St Giles kind of red thread model of having people there when you come round if you've been stabbed, to put that into every major trauma centre in England would cost £6 million a year. That's all. So, there's...
But the thing is, what we got to understand is we are being very reactive to this situation.
No, completely. No, I completely agree.
And
I completely agree.
How we tackle this is trying to get to it before this happens.
I completely agree.
And this money and this intervention needs to go into schools. It needs to go into our communities. And needs to go into our families.
Jamal, as a young man, what do you want to say about this?
Personally, as a 15-year-old growing up in the UK, and me seeing it happen, on my way coming home from school, going to school, for example, it's like a norm now for someone my age to be going from or to school to see someone getting run down with some form of knife or some form of offensive weapon in their hand. And with me hearing all the investing money and all of that, you don't necessarily need, don't get it wrong, you're still going to need the resources, but all it takes is for people to get down to a basic level with those people and just have a conversation.
Very quickly, we're going to run around a few people.
Acknowledge, praise and inspire, past, present and future, you know, like that's the standard for everyone. Everyone in this room can do that. Acknowledge the youths, praise them and inspire them, give them a direction from their past to the present to their future.
And you know as well, like when we're talking about this, we always goes back to it takes a village to raise a child. That's right. You know, but none of us want to do what the village does. That's right. You know, I know when I go to villages in different countries, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I guarantee, like, money can't buy culture, and a lot of us are going to go out there. We're going to see the youngers in the corner. We're going to walk right past them, like, look at them hoodies. We don't have that empathy. We don't have that love and that connection. And this is what we really need to focus on.
The young people don't have it either for each other.
Exactly.
You know what? I think we made a big example in Birmingham, because there was a stage in Birmingham where shootings were a daily occurrence, and that changed for a long time. We went at least 12 to 18 months where there was no firearms incidents reported, and that happened from the guys on the ground doing it them actual selves. When people are saying more police on the road can solve it, I didn't stop shooting after people because of the police. I changed because my mentality changed, my mind frame changed.
People around you changed.
The people around me changed, my social, that's what changed.
Sophie Linden, very quickly, Deputy Mayor, what did you want to say? What was your point?
Well, it's really just to back up this, that there isn't just one thing that's going to solve this problem. Yes, it's about enforcement. It is about A&E and youth workers, the Mayor's office, and we are investing in that. And it's absolutely about working with schools and communities. And that's what we are doing. But we need that to happen, and we need investment in order for that to happen in a really meaningful, long-term way.
Ira, I'll come to you in a minute. Sefton,
So,
then Lorraine.
Yeah, I've done the MOPAC training for the mayor. I also.
What does that mean?
So it was policing for all the police in London. So I was going up and down the country, Scotland Yard, and you name it. But the training that we do at Gangsline is understanding gangs, understanding the mindset. So what was spoken here, I don't know how many people actually are listening to the kids or listening to the children. It's us that are going through it, and no one's coming to people like myself to actually hear what we've got to say.
I mean, your son died 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And there are many, many groups trying to do good things. It's so depressing, the rise in the figures. It's as if nothing's working.
It's sickening. But I just want to be a voice for the kids. Because right now, they have got almost 0 places where they can meet. The community centres need to open again, because we're seeing hundreds of kids on the streets. After school, they're congregating in hundreds, and they need spaces. I mean, our police, Lambeth, Richard Wood, he's brilliant. He provided a space for the young people, and changes are happening in their lives.
And it makes a difference.
It makes a difference.
Harry, I know you do run a space. You do try to help kids, give them something to do.
Yeah, most certainly. I think one really key message here is that the people at the coalface that actually work with young people, I don't think we feel like we have a voice. There's a lot of people sitting a long way away, very, very detached from the young people that are making decisions on where the funding's going, what the policy's coming, and it's not what the young people need. We need to get into the communities at that level, and then we can start to make change.
Very, very quickly, sorry.
Hi, I'm Claire, I work for Sphere, and we work with young people from disadvantaged backgrounds all across London. And we really feel like a solution, actually, we know over the last 10 years, is to help them get into work and in sustainable work as well. And we've got lots of young people who are perpetrators and victims, like Reese, who's with me, who actually helping them change their mindset, making them realise they have a choice. They can't choose what happens to them, but they can choose their futures. And we support them for a year and actually longer to keep them in work and show they have a different future.
The issue of, Mohammed, the issue of politicians being too far removed to make things work. Is everyone in agreement?
Yes. Can I just say, in my case now, I've been a youth worker for 26 years and continue to do that. I really agree with Sophie in this one. There is no magic bullet, but I also agree with the Manhood Academy. It is about our families, about our culture, how we raise up our children to help them defend themselves. Hold on, I'll get there. Hold on. To help them defend themselves from some of the wickedness that's on the street. And I agree with the surgeon. It's everybody. Everybody needs to be involved, because the problem is
who disputes that this isn't about everybody?
It is about everybody, and people getting different here.
Young people come here, and it ain't just about playing pool or just having someone to chat to. It's about inspiring them, giving them opportunities. It's about helping them to have some form of infusing values. Therapies, absolutely needed. And when people talk about mental health, it ain't about they're crazy off their head. It's things where they can just go and talk to someone, have emotional intelligence, have emotional gathering.
Really quickly, Mohammed, sorry.
We have to also not forget the effect of the media. The media is created a culture where we see every black person or every young black male as a murderer. And these kids are watching this. And they're starting to believe the hype that's being created by the media. And the media, for me, is being very irresponsible with the lives of these young people.
Martin Griffiths and then Davis.
So look, guys, I hear what you're saying, all right, and it's brilliant, but it counts for nothing to me, all right? My job nowadays, okay, is to convert murder to attempted murder. That's what I do every day. Thank you all very much for that. I didn't get into business to do this, okay? We talk about strategy and plans and interventions. The problem is you can't make a strategy if you get basics right. Until education is right, social services are right, until parenting is right, until the community is right, we can't make a strategy, and that's all down to us.
But what is the answer? Sorry, very quick, because I want to throw it to other people. But what is the answer?
Is one word. The answer to one word is forgiveness. We talk about blame, responsibility. It's about forgiveness. Children make mistakes. Forgive them and support them.
But that's too idealistic. That's the truth. Because they come.
We live in
a
Simpler.
Sorry.
Children are being killed, so it's not a case, you know, I'm not going into the forgiveness of the murderers, etc. But the thing is, though, and I will say this, and I mean it in the most respectful way, if all the children, and I say children, are put in one area and showed the government the bodies of these young people, or however, if they had been blown up by terrorists or alternative ways, the government would think that is a horrendous problem, and we are going to actually do something about it.
Yeah. We're not dealing, we are going forward like we can do the solution, but they're the ones that are in the problem.
The clear thing is that they need guidance, don't they? They need support, they need help.
They need to be heard. They need to be heard.
The problem is they're not.
They need to be heard.
The problem is they're no longer children. They're in a war zone. You know, they come to you, doctor, they come to you when their bodies are broken, but long before that, their minds are broken.
Exactly.
And that's what we're trying to heal. It's not just the physical, it's the whole
I mean,
thing.
you are a young man, you are a child still.
A young person, yeah, can speak for most people in London now. You've got two sides to it. You've got the children that are thinking, the world is too dangerous for me to step outside my home without me carrying a knife, because it's got to the point now where it's like, I'm hearing regular conversations about, oh, you know, I got this knife on me, I'm hearing all of that. And I'm thinking like, hold on, where did that all come from? Because at the end of the day, if you think about social media as well, don't get twisted, you've got the people that use social media correctly, but then you've got the people that already have that broken mindset using social media.
And social media is a new phenomena in all of this, isn't it?
It's just, I think that what social media does, it brings it closer to the homes of the young people that are actually seeing this, and it brings the fear into their house, and they think that it's going to happen to them. And when the victims of these things that go up on social media is viewed by thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and that affects them mentally.
The children need to be empowered to be able to sit on boards where they can make decisions. Yes. That's one of the problems. We're making decisions for the people, but they need to make decisions for themselves.
Yeah, just to add to that, yeah. One, the kids need to be able to represent themselves, and two, we need to engage with them with empathy, because I feel like the perception of, I don't know, like politicians or the governments or funders or people that are giving money to these charities have no empathy, have no understanding of the people they're trying to help. They don't really care. It's just, okay.
Or should you say love?
Love, empathy, however you want to, some sort of compassion, some sort of human-to-human engagement, not just here's some money, stop some live crime in your community, there you go.
But you see, when Jamal talks about a world where young people don't feel safe to go outside without a knife, I mean, it's a damning indictment of where we are, isn't
absolutely.
it?
And Jamal was kind enough to... Jamal came into Parliament and talked to Google and Facebook and others with us about what was going on social media, and you know, I can remember you saying that you could see sometimes 100 images a day of something violent that was just coming up on your feed.
Peter Kirkham, sorry, as a former Met police officer, do you think there's too much understanding about this?
No, not at all. There's loads of reasons why this is happening. We've heard a load tonight. There's loads of things that need to be addressed, and there's loads of answers. The police are a necessary part of that because you only keep public space safe by having people there doing it, and that's the police's job. Now, we can work with them on making that better, and they can liaise with youth groups and whatever, but if they haven't got the numbers, they can't. And I think everyone here that runs a youth group is seeing less of the police now than they did a few years ago.
Would you like to see more of the police?
So we need someone to coordinate it, and that is the government's
Hello,
job.
sorry. Can I just say, you know what? When I was on the streets here, you put more police on the streets, there's going to be more hatred towards the police.
Unless they change their nature or
that didn't change.
But then the police can't win, can they?
No, it's
the problem for the police. It's not a problem for the police. It's a problem for the people in our community. Ourselves as men.
Dealing with it ourselves.
Manhood. We have to stand up for like men and do our stuff out.
Like what these brothers are doing.
At the end of the day, the police get paid to enforce. Yeah. That is not the solution. The community are doing it for free. There's no. Hold on. The community. Listen. For years,
one at a time. Mohammed, when you finish.
Because of police interventions, we understand. We understand the community live here. We don't change. We don't move. We live here. And the problem is, no one invests in us. We are not able to feed our families and communities because everything we do, we're expected to do for free, while the police get paid. That's not where the investment should be. You invest in the community to solve their own issues.
I'm not saying the police should be the only people funded. Youth groups should be funded. All the groups in this room should be funded. That's right. Council services should be funded. Mental health should be funded.
Sorry, 1 second, Davis.
I really feel it for the parents who's lost the children, you know, because like we're all focused on this, we should do this. We don't have we're not even understanding. We should be like around them and really like. There's too many damn opinions. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And the thing is as well, we're not prepared to really do what's necessary. We want change on our terms. It's not happening. It's not happening.
But what do you mean by that?
Meaning, we're very stubborn as a culture. Meaning, we want to sit here on our couch, get funding. I don't want to change my mindset, but things are going to... It's not happening. Until we start walking on the road, and acting, thinking, transforming the way we think, it's not going to change.
One thing I've noticed is me being in the outside world and me actually seeing it happen, because I've had circumstances where it's been as simple as me walking to the bus stop or me running home because I'm seeing a big piece of drama take place outside where I'm living. So it's like I'm seeing a bunch of people my age or a bit older or a bit younger than me all in the same thing. Like there was a little, well, it wasn't a little, it was a very big hype that happened outside my home between two rival gangs. And most of these youths couldn't have been much older than me. And it's like, for example, I've had conversations with people roughly my age or even younger than me, because at the end of the day, it's like not everyone sees the same thing, and not every kid will see the same thing. But I've seen it a way where we can kind of flip it just by having some simple words with kids.
We are running out of time. I'm so sorry. I want to talk.
One time ago, we could have said like, the people in higher places brainwash our kids. But now our kids have been brainwashed by either the same entertainment that they're getting, and they are lost. Our kids, bottom line,
Lorraine
they are
and
lost.
Alison, two bereaved parents. I think this is, if you could end the programme.
Okay.
You know, do you have any optimism at all?
I just want to say, two weeks before Dwayne died, he actually said to me, Mum, I don't think I'm going to make my 21st birthday because of how dangerous it is on the streets. He didn't make his 21st birthday. We need to listen to the kids and not just listen. We need to invest and materialise what they need. And our police have helped us to do that with Dwayne Boxing. That's a reality from a bereaved mum.
Alison?
For me, you know, we've had this discussion today, and I'm sure we all appreciate being here, but how many more young people are going to bleed to death on the floor, outside a community centre, on the streets of the UK, until something is done? So, you know, how many times have family members brought this problem to government and to everybody, and it's still not changing? They need to start listening.
Michael, we began with you. Your son only died in November. You've got a long road ahead. What's your final thought?
Well, my final thought on this right now is that with the kids who become the killers, who's getting the killers who is younger, the killers getting younger, and when we said we need to listen to the kids them. We need to give them that hopes so the youths them can open up to us and tell us what's happening. Because so many youths are suffering within because they don't have no one to talk to. And the next thing, they are going through so much pain within themselves. And if they open them out and talk, they become labeled, called snitch, called all these kind of all these sort of names. So the youths them, my encouragement to the youths them now, don't listen to what people saying with their nonsense. If you have something to say, open your mouth and find an adult or your parents and say something to them.
I am genuinely so sorry we have to end it there because we could have talked for days. And I am very grateful to all of you for joining us this evening. Thank you so much. That is it from us this evening. Channel 4 News. Good night.